Hello everyone and welcome back to the And More Bus Videos YouTube channel. I'm And More Bus Videos, otherwise known as And More Central, depending on what day of the week and what video you're watching. And welcome to Hillswick, there we go, Hillswick Park and Ride in Yorkshire Counties 3.0 with SM15 ADX that is first Leeds' 10.8 metre right Streetlite. We've got it in the lovely LeedsCity two-tone green livery. I see quite a lot of these around at the moment. They have a small batch, but they do seem to get all over the place. And in this video, we're going to be taking this lovely, small, but hopefully nippy vehicle on the U46 service that runs from the Park and Ride, takes around 40 minutes, all the way to the university terminus. We'll go through Wavesworth, we'll go through Windhaven and Ashbury as well. So it should be a decent run. We are a couple of minutes late, so I'm going to get the bus all set up and we'll get people on the vehicle, because I believe most of the people here are waiting for us. So yeah, the route itself should take 42 minutes. We'll see if it does or not. We'll have to wait until the ticket machine wants to load up for us to answer that question. For now, we will slightly move the vehicle forward. And we'll get the indicator listed on as well. And what I will do in advance is I will get the lights on, because it is going to be a... That's the wrong one. It's that one. And then it's that one. Yep. And then we'll get the blind sorted. And now it won't be stand 1, will it? No, my luck. Or stand 2 we go to. I was close. University. Stand 2, excellent, and there are all our people. So we'll get all of these on, and then we'll make a move. I'm once again using the first South Yorkshire style blinds that, for good reason, doesn't look right with the LeedsCity Streetlite. It would look relatively okay with the LeedsCity Street deck. I'll explain that very shortly. But with this, it doesn't particularly look too right, if I'm entirely honest. So before that vehicle blocks us in, we're going to make a move, because otherwise, if he blocks us in, that's it. And I'll get shut of the running board as well. We can't be driving with running board on the steering wheel. I can't see where the wheel's going. So for context as to where we're starting, the first Yorkshire garage in-game is just down that road where the 83A is going. So just down there. So I thought it had been a little bit since I'd driven the Streetlite, especially the 10.8 metre one, and I thought, well, why not a bit of LeedsCity green? Never hurts from time to time, although I am more of a fan of the South Yorkshire repaints that have been done, the liveries. So once again, at the time that I'm filming this, and it won't still be there when I release this, First South Yorkshire have the BZL double-decker on loan again. Whether it's there long enough for me to be able to go over and record a video is another question. So I can cross my fingers and hope. And you'll all relatively know the answer pretty soon if I got... You'll probably know the answer before this video is released if I manage to get round and sample the demonstrator. So... Because I keep missing them. In Sheffield, I do keep missing the demonstrators. I missed the BZL single-decker. I missed the U-Tongue decker. I did see the U-Tongue decker, though. I did see it. I saw it on its last day with them. It had some important dignitaries on the vehicle, testing it out and what have. It was going around Sheffield city centre. I did see it, as I say, on the last day. But unfortunately never got to sample it. But the BZL decker that has already been here for the 51 service has returned for trial on the X78. It's done a weekend on the Flying Scotsman shuttles, and now is being trialled on the XM78. I'm hoping that the trial takes place for the entire week, because as I film this, quite excitingly, at the end of this week, I'm going to be back in my favourite place in South Yorkshire. So all being well, the vehicle will still be there, to be quite nice, but knowing my luck with these demonstrators at the moment, it probably won't be, as I do keep missing them. And when we say keep missing them, I keep missing them by a day. I had the issue in Hull when East Yorkshire had the BZL, where I missed sampling it by a day. I saw the vehicle, was unable to sample it at that time. Thought, oh, I'll rock up early the next day, only to find the vehicle had been sort of decommissioned from East Yorkshire and had been returned to Wrightbus that same day. So then there was the one at Morbus, Go South Coast. That its first day out was the day that I was leaving, so we got a photograph of it on its first trip of the day. But because we were leaving to catch a pre-booked train, we had to say farewell to that opportunity to sample that bus. And yeah, once again, it didn't happen. Luckily enough, though, that time I did get a photograph of it, so that was good. But the one I really haven't seen is the BZL Decker, and I really want to ride on it. I think that I really want to sample that and the Yutong Decker. Now, if we'd have had the Bus Expo again this year, it would have just gone. We would have been in a position where I would imagine the Yutong Decker and the BZL Decker would have both been there as vehicles that you can... Just getting off. Would have both been there as vehicles that you could sample and go for test driving. Now, that would have been really nice from a sort of industry analyst perspective. It would have been really nice to sort of experience the vehicles and see what they were like. But because that's not been the case, it's kind of the situation where you've got to go around the country and cross fingers that you're in the right place at the right time to sample the vehicles. Although I would imagine with the Yutong Decker and with the BZL that there are a number of orders for each vehicle from friends of mine and colleagues who've sampled the vehicles so far. They have been relatively impressed. And it's good. It's what we want in the industry at the moment, because we've had a few rather shoddy vehicle types enter the market, and yes, some have been more successful than others and what have, but it does provide some hope that there are some relatively okay buses appearing in the industry at the moment. That's what we want. Because as you're getting rid of quite solid Volvo D7Cs, B7s, B9s, your old ADL Trident 2s, yes, the emissions on the vehicles are rather high, but compared to some of the hybrid and electric models that have been released recently, they're a lot more sturdy, a lot more rigid than them. That is, again, something that those people who have sort of experienced the bus industry longer than I have will also argue was the case when the B7 ALX 400 showed up to replace the Leyland Olympians. So it seems to be a common trend that we're going toward cheaper, not as sturdy, not as potentially reliable vehicles. So having some vehicles that are coming along that are relatively keeping a good level of quality is really what is needed at the moment, especially for bus operators, to be sort of re-given confidence into the new vehicles that are coming out. I mean, speaking of that, there are a lot of 73 plate coaches around at the moment, and I mean a lot. Today I've done a bit of a trek, partially cross-country trek as usual for me. And something that really took me by surprise were the amount of 73 plate coaches on the networks, as in Megabus, Flixbus and National Express, and also the random 73 plates going around on private hires. I understand that sort of going on into the coach industry at the moment, especially on the networks, they're doing relatively well because of the rail strikes. But understanding that in essence, elements of the industry, predominantly the bus side, and predominantly the North and Wales are really struggling at the moment for operators and funding and passenger numbers and vehicle reliability. It's really, really strange to then look at the coach side around the same area and see that all these operators, these random companies, including some startups, then we've got all these brand new 73 plate vehicles. I mean, I saw a Flixbus 73 plate coach. I saw a National Express Levante 3 on trade plates. That'll be a 73 plate as well. There was a 73 plate fully white Scania lurking around with a couple of people on up and down the motorway. And it would just, there's just a lot of brand new coaches at the moment. And then there was one upon arrival, another Flixbus vehicle that was a triaxle from a Manchester-based operator. And it's just really, really odd how out of nowhere we seem to be having such a rush for brand new coaches this year. They're not necessarily electric. Quite a lot of the coaches that I saw today, I think every single one was fully diesel. So presumably there's some sort of rush to get brand new diesel coaches in before they stop being as commonly sold as they are. That potentially could be the case. Or it's just a case that, for example, Flixbus, that is still relatively small compared to Megabus and National Express. But Flixbus is doing okay. It is doing relatively well. I can only presume that on the Flixbus side, there's a lot of funding being pumped in from the European Empire for brand new coaches, brand new vehicles. But again, the argument that I'll always have for that is, at the end of the day, I mean, the coach that I went on today was a 16 plate coach, passing all these brand new 73 plates. I was on a 16 plate coach. And yes, it was a little bit dirty inside, and yes, it wasn't the newest of the newest coaches, but it had the USBs, had relatively comfy seats. I got to sit at the front and got a nice view of where we were going. The driver, who's regular driver for that coach, seemed quite happy with it. And you just kind of, you sort of think, well, if that all works, and that's a 16 plate, and it's running faultless, then why are we getting why is pretty much the entire network being upgraded to 73 plates all of a sudden? It just seems a little bit odd. It's like Whippet coaches, for example, were using 67 plate Levante 2s recently, ex-National Express, on the Flixbus network. Now, those vehicles had USBs that worked, and they had very comfy seats from the National Express network. They did the job. They were quite used to it. Yes, they were relatively high mileage. The mileage wasn't the lowest in the world, but it's National Express vehicles. So it just strikes me as strange as to why they've just got all these brand new, out of nowhere, 23 plates. I mean, yes, I understand if Flixbus is doing well, but with how low cost the tickets are on it in a competitive market, one does have to wonder how much money is being pumped in from Flixbus Europe to say to these operators, we'll give you this much money to upgrade your vehicles and we'll pay for your contracts and stuff like that. It's just really, really odd. Very, very strange. And then going on with other operators, I just find it so odd how at the moment there's quite a lot of people investing in 73 plates, some of which have really worked for them. Some operators, I must say, have really worked to invest in brand new vehicles. But others, on the other hand, brand new startups, relatively recent, got the odd contract. And it just seems like you're putting yourself sometimes down to doomed to fail. A bit of doomed to fail theory. Because at the end of the day, there's no contracts going that after about 6 months, looking at all the overheads that you have to pay, all the staff that you have to pay, all of the buses that you have to run and maintain, that unless you have properly pre-planned, that you can be investing in these 73 plate brand new coaches and brand new vehicles, especially for contracts that and on the Flixbus side, going back to that, are still only a few years old. They're only still experimental. I mean, you've got to remember that it was about 2.5 years ago that the Flixbus network properly launched. They had a good little go at it in 2020 with a very, very skeleton network, very small skeleton network. Then that ended, and then 2021 they properly ramped it up. So it's only been going 2.5 years, and I mean, yeah, it might be doing okay points, but there's nothing to say that you want to invest immediately into new vehicles. I mean, look at the Megabus model. The Megabus model was based on the fact that they ran triaxle, Leyland and Volvo Olympian double-deckers, and they ran them for years. Those vehicles were run on those services for years. And then when they started to get the coaches in, yes, they got a few new coaches, a couple, but it wasn't the entire network that was overhauled with new coaches. Quite a few lines still kept double-decker triaxle buses because they were that popular, and because it was that cheap and it was a low-cost unit that, again, is what Flixbus is at the moment. They kept quite a lot of the buses on. I mean, you get the case where some of the brand new E400 Trident 2s would end up on the Megabus network as double-deckers. I mean, I dread to think what it did on the warranty, but they used to do trips to London. If, like, let's say Manchester ran out of triaxle Decker Olympians, they sent a brand new E400 to London, or a brand new E400 to Edinburgh or Glasgow or somewhere like that. And that was the model that they went on, where the idea was new buses were very, very small, were very targeted, were very specific, based on routes, based on lines, based on specific corridors that they felt they needed them, and then slowly but surely built up. That's what worries me a little bit with Flixbus. Is it's good having all of this money pumped in, but if a route isn't working, if a route is currently unsuccessful, the last thing you want to do is invest in brand new vehicles for that service before it is heavily in the profit, heavily in the profit margin before you invest in a new coach. Because as long as it has Wi-Fi, as long as it has USBs, as long as it's relatively tidy, and as long as the seats are comfy, your passengers aren't going to notice. And if your vehicles are reliable and your vehicles are working, and they're that good to a degree that they can then be sold on, that's what the Whippet coaches, Levante 2s were, then at the end of the day, you really want to keep them. I won't get shut to them. I'd make sure you'd give it at least 3-4 years before you start overhauling an entire fleet of vehicles, and then you do your assessments and go, well, are we going to keep running this service? Is it successful enough? Are we earning enough money? And is it sustainable? And then you'd make your decision. But then again, that's just little old me thinking. Not everybody thinks like me. I mean, a good example of that, going off the side of coaches and going onto minibuses, is a brand new demand responsive scheme in Wales. I believe the scheme was launched 18 months ago, around about. It was launched with brand new 71 plate little minibuses. No, they didn't buy second-hand Optare Solos like Derbyshire Community Transport. No, they didn't get SRs in or try and get some second-hand Mellors, anything like that. No, they got brand new 71 plate Sprinters. And as a result of purchasing these brand new multi-million-pound vehicles for these services, because the growth in 18 months hasn't built the cost back of the vehicles and now funding has been cut, the concept is now being finished. It's now being cancelled directly as a result of the lack of funding. That if you aren't given an amount of money, you usually want to make the money last. I mean, that would be my thinking. You want to make the money last, so you want to have the perspective and think, well, yes, people want a service, but what do people want more? A service with brand new shiny buses that they'll probably spend 10 minutes on with all the features under the sun that they'll never use. Or do they want a vehicle that may be a little bit older, it'll still have comfy seats, it'll still have a nice driver, and it'll take them 10 minutes down the road on their essential link that they need. They can do the shopping and go home. And you tend to find most people are after the latter. They're more after the service rather than the brand new vehicles. And it's not been the only scheme like that. I mean, the West Yorkshire East Leeds demand responsive service using the electric Fiat things. I never sampled the service. I saw it a few times. It started just after COVID. And I thought, okay, that's a bit different. That's a bit different. And I remember thinking when it first started, I was like, why on earth are they running a demand responsive service east of Leeds city centre? If you're going to pick an area to do demand responsive, absolutely anywhere, the two locations or three locations potentially that come to mind. Oh, did somebody want to get off there? Yeah, they did. We'll get you off. But the three locations that come to mind, top of my head, is the Calder Valley, as in Hebden Bridge and Todmorden, where the local Hebden Bridges and Todmorden locals run, and the Home Valley, where the Hornforth local services run, and the Meltham local services run. And as a third one, a little bit different, but Pontefract. Pontefract, Hemsworth, South Hemsall. And they would be the three areas that I would be more interested in starting in demand responsive servicing, rather than picking East Leeds, that compared to those areas really didn't need the demand responsive, because most people are within a 10-minute walk of the bus anyway. And I can't think of an area that is served less than every 30 minutes by a bus in that local area. I mean, yes, there are odd services like the 11, for example, that are every hour, but again, that crisscrosses the 16, crisscrosses the 4, crisscrosses York Road, crisscrosses the 64, and it goes near the coastline when it goes up to Skulls. And you've got all of these services, and out of everywhere to run a demand responsive concept, they chose East Leeds. I mean, it has the concept that Go Coach did with demand responsive, not taught anyone anything, where they converted pretty much all of their network in the town to demand responsive, and did it as a trial, and found out that the data suggested that the more popular urban areas had to have their services reinstated because it made more money, because there were more people catching it, because they needed more of a rigid service. Whereas the more rural areas, the less frequent areas, needed the demand responsive element. I mean, it's not rocket science with these things, and I just found it so absurd as to why you wouldn't think, hang on, how can we save a bit of money? How can we save a network? And how can we make a network a bit easier for people? Oh yeah, wait, we'll put a demand responsive network into Todmorden and Hebden Bridge. You can cut down on the amount of vehicles, and yeah, you probably still have the odd service that still requires a rigid timetable. You probably would. You always will with these concepts, but you'd also probably find that there's a number of corridors where you could actually just cut down the services that you're running and make it a DRT service. Like there will be routes in which that can be done. I mean, the Eves 598s, for example, could be done on them. Possibly in part on the 595, it could be done. And you've got all of these little areas that that concept could be explored on. Rather than picking the east side of a city centre that has the most frequent buses in the county. It was just an absolutely absurd thing. It just made no sense. And now they've got all the charging stations for these vehicles at Hunslet Park Depot that I really hope they can utilise for the BYDs and the U-Tongs that they've got. Because otherwise they're going to be absolutely stuffed with them, because all of these electric Fiats are now going to TLC travel to use on Access Bus instead. So it has benefited them at Access Bus. So I've got some nice shiny vehicles to run alongside some of the more elderly Optare Solos and the SRs. So that's good. But then again, it was a lot of money that was spent on brand new electric minibuses that again weren't needed. Should have just got some rental vehicles in to trial it, and then if it works, you then buy your brand new vehicles, and they could have gone from there. So that would be my thinking on it. I mean, any concept like that, you should always get rental vehicles in first. Cheap, easy to maintain, easy to run rental vehicles. And then you start thinking, oh, is it successful, isn't it? And then purchase the brand new vehicles. Because the concepts that have failed have put too much pressure on the overheads to make money back by buying brand new vehicles and potentially putting infrastructure in where it isn't needed. And as a result, areas that needed the infrastructure and needed the funding haven't had the funding because the funding's been spent on something that it didn't need to be spent on. So, but yeah, that's my little bit of a rant at that. There were interesting concepts to analyse, very, very interesting concepts to analyse. I mean, one that was interesting when you look at the minibuses was the Little and Often scheme in Stagecoach in Kent that was trialled with the little Sprinter minibuses. It turned out that the scheme was that popular that they had to get rid of the Sprinters and put Optare Solo big buses on. So they found on certain corridors they reduced the timetable and the Sprinters were still okay. And then as a result of slightly reducing the timetables over time, they had to replace the Optare Solos. And on some timetables, they increased the frequency of the service with the Sprinters, and then the frequency remained increased with the Optare Solo vehicles as well, purely because the idea of a bus rocking up very frequently was attractive to customers. Now, there's some schemes that work and there's some schemes that don't, but the Little and Often scheme was one that was researched. They did the market research. People went out and asked the questions. People did the data collecting and data analysing before they made the decision. I mean, I don't know what data collection took place in East Leeds before that happened, but most people are within a 10-minute walk of a regular bus service. Even now with timetable cuts, is still every 30 minutes or less. I mean, and then if you are infirm or you've got an issue that means you struggle to walk 10 minutes, you have the access bus at your disposal as well. So it just felt like a little bit of a waste. Did the little electric minibuses? It was a shame that it was trialled there and not trialled somewhere in West Yorkshire where it was needed, where money could be saved and spent elsewhere, and that was the biggest shame about it. Then again, Sheffield Connect is going to be getting some brand new electric vehicles. So there's going to be a few of them. I'll discuss them a little bit more than likely when they rock up, if they are still on delivery, or they've even been made yet. But I will discuss them at that point. But they're going to be interesting. The Connect is doing surprisingly well. It is doing surprisingly well. It's nice to see it's doing surprisingly well. But then again, there's just been an absolutely huge wave of service cuts in South Yorkshire, that some of which could have been prevented if the money that was spent on the Connect was spent on those services. Then again, it is making journey times across the city centre slightly quicker because people are becoming aware of it, and most people, not all, but most people are catching it across town instead of the local service buses. That does allow them to keep on time. There is still quite a few stragglers though who do catch the service buses across the city, to which my suggestion would be to adopt the Nottingham bus service model, the Nottingham network. Now, the Nottingham network model is pretty cool. It goes along the idea of coloured lines for services, and the coloured lines all distinguish a certain road, a certain key route corridor. So you have your greens, you have your yellows, and they all start and finish in the city centre. They all do a loop in the city centre, and then they all radiate out with different colour corridors. The service numbers are relatively similar as well to make it easy for the customers. They know what colour bus they need to catch on their corridor, and 9 times out of 10, the correct vehicle is allocated to the correct route. It's very rare that it isn't the case. As a result, Nottingham City Transport is incredibly successful because the buses are easy to use. People look out in the city centre for a vehicle in the colour of the line that they live on. So they wait for that vehicle and catch it and jump on that bus. And as a result, it makes commuting and travelling into the centre by bus a lot more attractive. And I think if Sheffield adopted a model like that, i.e. services split, the majority of services split in the city centre. Yes, you could have a few that extended up to the Hallamshire Hospital, for example. So the 120 could extend up to the Hallamshire Hospital and turn around there. But the majority terminated in the city centre. They could all do one loop around the centre, encompassing the Moor, Arundel the interchange, bits like that. And if you did a concept like that, then overall, as a model, it would really work because you wouldn't need the Sheffield Connect. It would make it easier for people travelling around the city centre, as they'd see everything going around the city centre loop. And people would also know what coloured vehicle they're looking out for, instead of sometimes seeing a bus in the city centre with a service number on and jumping on it and going in the wrong direction. Then it would also help punctuality. It's been known that if you do split a route in the centre into two, it does improve punctuality overall, because if an issue does happen on one side of the route, it no longer affects the entire route, it just affects that section. So it does improve reliability, it makes it a lot easier and smoother to run the services, makes it easy for customers. There's less miles on the vehicles as well, because they're used to the same corridors, same routes. And overall, as a concept, it just works. It really works. And if you've got the facility to terminate vehicles in the city centre, to which Sheffield does have that facility at its disposal, it is something that could work so well. And I think if you introduce a network like that, you combine key corridors, you combine operators together in order to achieve your key corridors, that would work. Because yes, there's franchising, there's the B network where everything's painted the same, everything's yellow, but the Nottingham network works as well, where everything's a different colour, all the buses are coloured differently, and as a result of them all being coloured differently, it basically means that overall, people can distinguish their service. People can distinguish their key corridor. If somebody asks a question and goes, oh, what bus goes here? You can say service number, green line, you're looking out for green bus. And that works. I mean, it would make your life a lot easier. Yes, you'd obviously have to have spare vehicles, but a concept like that would work so well as a model. It really would as a model. Seriously would. And that's why Nottingham is as successful as they are. It purely boils down to that. Yes, there are other attributes. They do have quite a lot of spare vehicles and ensures route branding is adhered to quite well. They can keep fares low as well. Other bits like that. They have a bit more of a voice because the council own. They have a bit more of a understanding of all the other stuff going on. And they can react accordingly. So they do have advantages with that. However, it is still possible to replicate the successful network plan that they achieve, because it is successful. It is successful, and it's known countrywide as a successful plan. And it makes things easy. I mean, it's something that could be so easily achieved in Sheffield, purely based on the locality of First Olive Grove to the city centre. You've not got much dead mileage, and even if you wanted to reduce on dead mileage further, you could run a load of short workings to Olive Grove Road. You could run short workings to Ecclesfield, so you could ensure that Stagecoach in Ecclesfield and Holbrook had the local corridors that go near the depot, and as a result, just after peak time, all the vehicles that go in and finish in the city centre could then run out as extra service 1s or service 2s or something like that. So yeah, you still have your longer services like your Barnses and bits like that, but overall as a concept that would make life for people so much easier on the city network. Yes, the longer distance is slightly different, but on the city network that would make life so much easier and make it a lot easier for customers to understand as well, getting in and out of the centre. And if you are popping in on the train and you've got to catch a bus to, let's say, the Hallamshire Hospital or the uni, you could look out for the red line or the blue line, and you'd know what line you get in and make life easier. And then you could also integrate it with the trams in Sheffield. And this is all these different parts of the model. I didn't really think the conversation would go down this road, if I'm honest. I've very enjoyed it. I hope you've all found it slightly insightful and it's not just been one big rant. But I do think it's quite important sometimes to understand the perspective of why bus networks are as successful as they are, and it doesn't boil down to the vehicles that you run necessarily. It doesn't boil down to the vehicles that you run. That's probably the biggest motto with this. And it very much boils down to how easy you make a network to be understood. How easy a network can be understood by the general public. That sometimes in the industry we can really easily forget that we understand the bus industry very well. We talk bus talk. However, if we start putting bus talk inside buses, branding buses, in adverts for bus services, most people, it will go straight over their heads and they will not understand it. You have to make a network so easy to understand, easy to catch, easy to pay for, easy to get there, easy to get back. That's when you get your people. That's when your people will turn around and go, oh yeah, it's cheaper and easier than my car. Because until you get to that point where they are in full confidence that buses will show up on time, buses will be cheap, buses will be easy to get there and get back, then most people will not have confidence to get rid of their car. It is so easy for people to start moving towards getting their car and not catching the bus anymore, yet it is so difficult to get people out of their car and on a bus. It is the most difficult thing to achieve that way around. It's basically trying to achieve the impossible, trying to get people out of their cars and onto a bus. It is very, very difficult. That is a shame. I must say, it is a shame. Really, really is. But at the end of the day, oh, now I understand these lights. Every time they confuse me. Yeah, it's just them, but you've got to wait there instead of waiting there. It's odd. But yeah, that's what it boils down to. That's what it boils down to. If you ever want to understand why a company is successful and why it isn't successful, that's pretty much it. easy to use, is reliable as in it shows up, reliable as in the timetable's achievable, and reliable as in people have the confidence that when they leave, they are actually going to get back home in one piece. That is the biggest thing that people tend to forget. Because if your bus is going to be late in the morning or is not going to show up in the morning, then the people have no confidence that when they just want to go home because they've had a long day and they are tired, they will have absolutely zero confidence in the fact that that bus will show up. And as a result, they'll go through the commute in their car and go through all of that stress and hassle purely because they know that them getting home is in their hands. They know that they will get in their car and they will go home. They know it might take a while because they can't use the bus lanes and what have, but they're in full confidence that they've got more chance of getting home by car than getting home by bus. And that's where it boils in, where you have to make your timetable and your scheduling realistic. A lot easier said than done, but you do have to make it realistic. Because if you don't make it realistic, people will not catch your service. I've just realised I'm at the wrong bus stop. I thought that said 1 on the top, and then as we're shooting past it said U46. I thought, okay. So there we go. So that was a nice run. I was unexpecting to discuss the electric system. Okay. Just let the engine boil over then. Yeah, I was only going to discuss the LeedsCity street deck based at Sheffield, but we've gone down a different road, a nice road, because it's not necessarily a rant. It's quite an insightful discussion. Do let me know in the comments what you think. But I do tend to find driving a bus around, something like this, in realistic livery, starts to bring off conversation topics, and that's what I like to use these videos for. Is to discuss things that I won't necessarily discuss and go out of my way to make a video on. But it's stuff that I can discuss and have a chat with, and hopefully in the comment section you can get involved as well. But yeah, that's a few case studies in there, bit of discussion, and do let me know what you think in the comments, whether you agree with what I've researched, what I believe as a result, or whether you've got a new idea to bring to the table, or you've done your own research and found something different. Do let me know in the comments below. But for now, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then do be sure to click that like button so that more people can find it and enjoy like you have. And if you haven't already, do be sure to subscribe to the And More Bus Videos YouTube channel for more content like this from the simulation section, as well as an archive of over 6,000 backseated engine-focused public transport videos. From buses, trams, trains and more, there's something on there for everyone, with an additional 21 videos added per week, alongside 2 simulation videos each week as well. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will see you all in the next video, mate. Goodbye for now. Bye.